Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Startup Vagabond. Today we're diving into one of the most iconic startup books of the past decade, 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel. If you're a founder, investor, or dreamer who wants to build the future, this book is a must read. It's not just about building companies, it's about how to think differently to create things that have never existed before. So first off, who's Peter Thiel? Peter Thiel is a legendary Silicon Valley figure, co-founder of PayPal, early investor in Facebook, Palantir, and one of the boldest voices in tech. He also invested in companies like LinkedIn, and he's also the showrunner of the PayPal Mafia, but we'll get into that later. So 0 to 1 is based on a course he taught at Stanford that was turned into a book by his student Blake Masters, who just took really good notes, and they partnered up and wrote this book together. So Peter Thiel's central belief is that true innovation doesn't come from copying others. It comes from creating something new, not 1 to N, but from 0 to 1, hence the name of the book. So what is 0 to 1? What are we talking about here? The title 0 to 1 really means creating something truly new, not just improving on what's already there. So Thiel argues that most companies go from 1 to N, iterating and competing with each other. But the most valuable companies like Google and Facebook, they did something nobody else was doing. They created entirely new categories. I love all of his quotes in here, and he has a lot of great lines throughout this book. My book is full of highlights, and one of those is, what important truth do very few people agree with you on? And he uses this whenever he's talking to kind of a potential new hires or people he's interested in, starting a dialogue with. Is what's an important truth that very few people agree with you on? It's a great question that, honestly, I hope to find an answer for myself soon. So the power of monopolies is one section in the book, and he loves his monopolies. Not the bad kind that exploit consumers, but creative monopolies that deliver something so good people can't live without. Great companies avoid competition. Instead, they build and dominate niche markets before expanding. Another passage from the book is all failed companies are the same. They fail to escape competition. So there's so many kind of key principles throughout this book, and the way he breaks up the chapters is great, but kind of some key takeaways I wanted to go through are, first off, start small. And one thing I for sure get this from the book, but I use this all the time when I'm talking to my students is start small. Then you can scale eventually, but it's always better to start too small and niche down too small rather than starting too big. So one of the best insights in this book is don't start big. Start with a small market you can dominate. Facebook started with Harvard. Amazon started with books. Nail that niche, then you can scale. So another quote from Peter Thiel is, the perfect target market for a startup is a small group of particular people concentrated together and served by few or no competitors. Start small, find that one first customer, then grow from there. If you're already starting off with, our customers are everyone, or one thing I and other investors hate to hear is if you ask them who your competition is and they say, we don't have any competition, or who's your customer? Everyone. Terrible answers. Never use that. So just, major bonus points there. And I'm sure you've heard me talk about this in previous episodes, but the next point is proprietary tech, brand, and network effects. Thiel breaks down what makes a startup defensible. The first is proprietary technology that's 10 times better. You need to be at least one standard deviation better than your competition or what people are currently using to solve the problem you're trying to solve, or else it's not even worth building. The second is strong network effects. And third is a powerful brand. So if you have all three, you're building something that can last for decades. Great technology should have proprietary technology, an order of magnitude better than its nearest substitute. And if you're not, then is it really worth the switch? People really hate having to make a switch from one tech to the next. So you really need to give that incentive or boost or reason why your technology is so much better than either what they're already using or the fact they're not using anything to make that behavioral change. Next is sales is not a dirty word. And I tend to be biased on this one because my background in sales, he really stresses the importance, especially for the more technically minded founders who think, the old, is it Field of Dreams, Field of Glory, that old baseball movie where he talks about, or the famous quote comes from, if you build it, they will come. That doesn't work when it comes to startups. So just put that out of your mind. You need to not only build an amazing piece of tech or business or model, but you also need to have a plan to sell. You need to have a plan to distribute it. One of the biggest reasons why Steve Jobs did so well is in Apple, I almost called it Mac in Apple, is he didn't just build an amazing product. He was a master at distribution. And one thing you'll hear from the U.S. military, one of the greatest militaries in the world, is you don't win wars just by having great tech. You win it purely by, or not purely, but mostly by the logistics department. I heard a story once about, it was like the Germans knew that they couldn't beat the Americans whenever they saw it was a truck or a boat come past them that its sole purpose was to deliver ice cream to the U.S. soldiers. And I think when they saw that we had the logistics capability of delivering ice cream to our soldiers, they knew the war had been lost. And nowadays, to prove that same point, I believe Burger King has a truck that they can load up in a military aircraft and have it delivered anywhere in the world now. So like, not to go on too far about this, but logistics and sales and distribution of your product is just as important as building the product itself. It's very hard to bring in money with an amazing product if you don't know how to talk to your customers about it and get $1 from them to start. Another chapter, he talks about the power law and venture capital. He kind of takes a side tangent here away from talking about startups and how to build a startup and how to be a great founder, and wants to talk a little bit more on the VC side of things. Remember, this book is a collection of lectures that happen throughout a semester, or probably multiple semesters, at Stanford, as he gave this talk through, over the course of time. So he talks about venture capital, and it's like the kind of the dirty secret in venture capital is, spoiler alert, most investments fail, but one mega hit tends to make the whole fund. If you look at most VC funds, even the top of the top, the Mark Andreessen, the Sequoia Capital, or the Andreessen Horowitz, Sequoia Capital, all of them, the vast majority of the time, they'll have 20, 30, 40 investments in one fund, but it really comes down to one or two that make all the returns, whereas most either just break even or even fail. But it really takes one or two that break out, and that's why these VCs are so focused on trying to find that unicorn. So the biggest secret in venture capital is that the best investment in a successful fund equals or outperforms the entire rest of the fund combined. So no pressure, but if you do get VC money or money from these angels or private equity or whatever, it is usually expected that you have the potential to make the whole fund. So keep that in mind before you take that check. One chapter he really talks about secrets and beliefs. And I really like this one because whenever you're working, like I've worked at, a few startups in the past, and I've run my own, and the best comparison that I always like to compare to is like you're on a pirate ship with a bunch of other, pirates, and you're trying to, find treasure. But it really does feel like we all have this secret, and we're all like hiding it from the world until it's ready to show, and we know something that they don't. So he talks, Thiel believes that every great startup is built on a secret, a truth you believe that others don't. And it's only by chasing those secrets that you can find and build something extraordinary. So he has a quote where he says, "A great company is a conspiracy to change the world. When you share your secret, the recipient becomes a fellow conspirator." You can look at all these great apps, like as they're just starting, whenever TikTok just got into the US, whenever people just started getting on Instagram, when people, the first few users of eBay, like all these, network effect companies that really blew up. Now, it's hundreds of millions of people are using them. But when they first start, it's, not everybody knows about this, but we do. Same thing with Reddit and all these other channels. So start with a secret of, what is something that I know or I believe that I can take with me that if it, becomes successful, other people will feel as though they're in on this conspiracy with us. So the next chapter, he talks about planning, definite plans versus indefinite hopes. So we live in kind of a world where people are scared to plan too far ahead. But Thiel argues the best founders are definite optimists. They have a vision and a plan to get there. A business with a good definite plan will always be underrated in a world where people see the future as random. And a bad plan is always better than no plan. So put a plan together and kind of run with it. He has a small section here where he talks about the founder paradox, where it's like you're not invincible or anything, but it is your responsibility, especially at the early stages, kind of between idea stage to maybe Series A when your team is small, or maybe just you. It's your responsibility to kind of have those secrets, to have that plan together, and really kind of use that leverage and that kind of mythos, at least in America, of the founder, and say like, all right, let's run with this thing. And like, you can really make some changes fast whenever you're starting off so small. So keep those things in mind and lead the ship. You're the captain of the ship. So take charge and go find that buried treasure. Some final takeaways I wanted to end this on is it's called the main kind of 5 points. If I had to summarize this whole book, is first off, avoid competition, build your own niche. Really go one standard deviation away from the curve, because if you're trying to just make something that's slightly better than the competition, you probably haven't given enough of a reason for behavioral change. So avoid competition, build your own niche, make something that's 10 times better than what they're currently using, or solves their problem 10 times better than their lack of solution to the problem. Start small and scale deliberately. It's always better to start too small than it is to start too big. So think long term and make a plan. Again, a bad plan is better than no plan. You can iterate with a bad plan, but with no plan, you're just lost. You're just, floating around in the open ocean. And above all, don't be afraid to think differently. Where do you think Mark Zuckerberg got that, famous quote of like, think differently? Actually, I'm pretty sure that was Apple. I'm wrong there. So last, if you're a founder building something new, this book is your blueprint. Honestly, love this book. This was my second time reading it. It's for sure in my top 5 of like all-time startup business books, anything. It's pretty short too. I think it's only like 190 pages. So quick read. If you're a fast reader, you can probably get through it in a weekend. I'm not. Took me a few weeks because I'm a very slow reader and I like to be deliberate. But overall, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this breakdown, drop a like, hit the subscribe button, and tell me in the comments, what's one secret that you believe that no one else sees, or like what's one thing that you believe differently than everybody else. So we'll end it there. So guys, until next time, see you around.